The latest update to my election model still has Donald Trump way ahead in the presidential race. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today we are looking at a colossal landslide for the former president coming in the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. As you all know, I have a very simple but yet effective election model that allows me to basically retrospectively go back to 2020 and get the election essentially perfect. This is what the margins would have looked like on my map, and with this new adjustment I made to the model, I would have been able to make it even more accurate down to almost a decimal point in some states, and you can compare this map to the map that actually occurred on election day. Arizona, Kansas, Nebraska's first, Alaska, Wisconsin, as well as North Carolina are the only states that have the incorrect shading on my model map. Every other state in terms of the category of where it went to, and besides Georgia as well, pretty much all lines up perfectly with the results that happened on the election day in 2020. And so looking at this model and seeing how accurate it was very, very simple. All I had to do was essentially create my own polling averages and estimate whether or not, give or take, where the states were going to go. And I remembered my estimated margins for some of the states back in 2020. We also have a demographic model, which in this case is using Atlas Intel's crosstabs and plugging that in. And then I find the trend between 1996 and 2016 and look at the trend between those 5 cycles, apply that trend to the 2016 numbers, getting me an estimated 2020 nonpartisan voting patterns for every single state. And then after that, I basically apply my national aggregate, which when I reweigh all of the polling data to the target elector from Atlas Intel, which also was the most accurate pollster in the 2020 election, we get a Biden plus 5.1 percentage point lead in the popular vote, which would have been better than 538 and RCP's aggregate, which were skewed more to the left. Now, looking at this, when you average out all the results based on certain weights that I've now calculated, which is the new part of the model now, I've essentially gone ahead and had ChatGPT essentially calculate weights for me for the 3 different columns for each individual state that would best help me match the actual result that happened on election day. And based on me doing this, I'm able to get even closer down to the decimal point in some of the key swing states, which is going to be very important in this election. You can even see Florida, a 3.3 percentage point win. I mean, guys, that is like the best margin you could have gotten from any election forecaster. I had Trump plus 3.4. Looking at a state like Iowa, if we go to that state, Trump plus 8.2, that's literally the exact margin that we got in the state of in Iowa. Literally the exact margin. Maine's 2nd congressional district off by a single point. Looking at a state like Minnesota, only to the left by a single percentage point. Montana would have been off by about half a point. Nebraska almost down to the decimal. We can also see over here, North Dakota is pretty much perfect. Ohio votes to the right of the model by give or take, or Ohio votes to the right of the model in the actual result by half a point. Pennsylvania is overestimating Biden by a point. Same thing in Wisconsin, like a 1.5. You see, in some of the swing states, I do overestimate Biden a little bit more, but even Texas is literally only 0.2 percentage points off. I mean, you couldn't have gotten anything better in the 2020 election cycle, and this does not use any historical data from the midterms or previous election cycles, because the whole point about midterms is that there are different candidates on different ballots in every single different state, which is too many uncontrollable variables just to be averaged in. Now, looking at a presidential year, you have the same 2 candidates on all 50 ballots, which is less control variables to essentially go through. And so that's why this model ends up working pretty decently. Not only that, right now, we also have something that's pretty fascinating. And I think that you guys are really going to enjoy to see this. Donald Trump is up at my national average now by roughly 4.1%. There are a lot of undecideds, but he is polling roughly, give or take, 8 to 9 points better in my polling average than the previous one. And so we are headed for a pretty quick election night if that ends up being the case. So looking at the safe Republican states, we have Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Alaska, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia in the safe Republican column, as well as Iowa at an 18.1 percentage point win for the former president. We can also go to the state of Ohio, a 16.9 percentage point win there. And in the state of Texas, a 15.3 percentage point win for the former president, as well as in South Carolina, a 20.8 percentage point victory for the former president, including Maine's 2nd congressional district at a 6.4 percentage point margin for the Republican nominee, granting him 189 electoral college votes in the safe Republican column, looking fairly similar to what I had in my last prediction. Looking at the safe Democrat states, we have a 20.5 percentage point margin for Kamala Harris in the state of California, a 74.3 percentage point win in the state of the District of Columbia. Looking at Maine's first, that is a 15.4 percentage point win there. We can also see that the state of Maryland is a 24.8 percentage point win in the Democrat column, as well as Massachusetts being a 26.1 percentage point victory for the Democrat nominee. Looking at Vermont, basically a 30-point victory when you round it out, is on the horizon for Kamala Harris. And looking at the state of Hawaii, that's not even in the safe column anymore, guys. It is no longer in the safe Democrat column. And, you know, what's pretty interesting is that with the new demographic model that was also implemented, this part of the model has been replaced. So instead of it just being Atlas, I basically combine all of the more accurate pollster crosstabs and what they weigh the electorate to, and looking at the margin. So you see white voters, Trump wins by 12, blacks, Harris wins them by 54, Hispanics plus 14 for Harris, which is what that CBS news poll pretty much got, and Asian/other is actually Trump plus 1, and I believe this comes out to roughly like a 2.5 percentage point lead when everything is said and done, give or take. So it's only like half a point off. Essentially looking at that, it's about half a point off, give or take. It's like a 0.9 percentage point error, which isn't abysmal. But when we look at this now, right, so we essentially weigh all these out, we get all the margins, and we plug that into the Cook Political Report swingometer, which is then essentially plugged into this part of the model. So that is the new part of the model that we just implemented today, which was able to help us get an even more accurate 2020 result, as well as the individual weights, including the new map as well. So all of that has been applied to the new map. Looking at the likely Democrat states, we have none other than Colorado at 8.2 percentage points for Kamala Harris. State of Oregon and Washington are about 9.2 percentage point wins and 11.1 percentage point victories respectively for Kamala Harris. Roughly a 10-point win in Illinois right now. Looking at the state of Connecticut, you have an 11.3 percentage point win. Delaware, a 9.7 percentage point win for Kamala Harris. Rhode Island, a 10.9 percentage point victory for Kamala Harris. As well as the state of New Jersey at just about a 7.2 percentage point margin for Kamala Harris, including New York at just an 8.6 percentage point victory for Kamala Harris as of right now. Yes, you heard me correct. A 8.6 percentage point win in the state of New York for Kamala Harris. She is known to be somewhat ahead by 12 to 13 points, but Democrats have been overstated in the last couple cycles in the state of New York by a pretty decent amount, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen again, and that's what the model's kind of accounting for when going through all of the columns. And so this is basically it, besides Hawaii, which is not only a 12-point victory for Kamala Harris. A lot of that has to do with that Asian/other group vote, which does drive states like, you know, New York to the right, Illinois to the right, Colorado, Oregon, New Jersey to the right. Another big factor is going to be Hispanics and African Americans, which is what we're going to get to now. Florida's an 11.5-point win for Donald Trump in this forecast. Georgia, a 6.4 percentage point win for the former president in this video. North Carolina, a 7.5-point victory for Donald Trump. Looking at Arizona, a 6.8 percentage point win for the former president. So Arizona votes to ride at Georgia just barely due to the immigration issue, as well as the southern border crisis. Definitely affects a state like Arizona more than Georgia, so that's why you're seeing that slight discrepancy there. Looking at Nevada, that is roughly, give or take, looking at the margin, we see that's a 5.4 percentage point win for Donald Trump, which is pretty impressive. Wisconsin is coming in at a 7.2 percentage point win for Donald Trump. Pennsylvania at 5.5 percentage points for the former president, essentially putting him over 270 electoral college votes in this video. Looking at the lean Democrat states in this forecast, we have the state of Maine at large, which is now going back into the Democrat column. So is the state of New Mexico at a 3.2 percentage point win for Kamala Harris, and Virginia at just 2.5 points for Kamala Harris in this video, including Nebraska second at 1.5 percentage point victories for Kamala Harris as well. I mean, this district is starting to seem pretty liberal leaning, to the point where even if Trump is winning the popular vote by over 4, we basically can't even get a victory in Nebraska second, and the recent polling hasn't really looked great either. Now, the only lean Republican state is Michigan, which is roughly, give or take, a 4.6 percentage point win. And for the only two tilt states on the map, which is New Hampshire and Minnesota, Minnesota currently is flipping to the former president by a tilt margin, which could very easily be in the tilt Democrat category. However, we do see it is currently flipping Republican by a 0.3 percentage point margin, effectively making it a toss-up. And New Hampshire is currently a 0.6 percentage point win for Kamala Harris, so she does regain her strengths in New Hampshire and Maine at large based on the new demographic modeling. Depending on how the new state polls go, you may see her lead expand in states like Virginia, New Mexico, New Hampshire, Maine at large. So we'll see where that goes. But clearly Kamala Harris has kind of flipped back some of those toss-ups a bit, but Donald Trump is still absolutely decimating her in the Electoral College in this video. If you did enjoy this content, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.